What's up, coders? So in the previous episodes we created a login screen that's completely functional, and then when we sign in, if we're not in a group, we'll be guided to this page where we need to create a group or create a book club. We need to join or create one. So right now let's just create one. We'll call it coders create, and you get a group created and you get to the static screen with nothing in it. But then you can check here, you have a group ID for the person that we created it with, and then if you refresh, you see a groups collection with one group in it. We have a leader, one member, name is coders, and that's it. But the UI, nothing changes in the UI. So today we're going to set up this first little UI block. We're going to be doing that using provider and creating a new state for groups. So let's get to the code. Alright, so first things first, let's create our models that we need to use. So the first one we already have, but we need to modify a little bit. It's our group model. So we're going to add two more things. We're going to add a string for current book ID and another timestamp of when the current book is due. So let's take those, put them in the constructor as well. And there we go. So we're going to need another model too, called book.dart. So in this, we're going to have a class named our book. Inside, we're going to have four parameters: string for the book ID, string for the name of the book, integer for the length of the book, how many pages, and a timestamp of when it was completed on, what day it was completed. Or we could call it date completed. And then also another constructor, this.id, no, not that, comma, and we gotta make sure it's book. So this.id, this.length, I don't know why I didn't put it in order, this.name, and then this date completed. Alright, so here's the constructor for the books we're going to use. So next thing, the biggest part of this whole video, is going to need a new state. We're going to say the state is current group.dart. So we have all the group information inside the state. So for our current group state, we're going to call it current group, and we're going to extend change notifier, and extends, not extend. So this, you need to do this change notifier because of provider. We're going to have two states in here. We're going to have our group of current group. We need to initialize our group. And then we're also going to have another one for our book, which is going to be the current book that we're reading. And then you want to create setters and getters for that. So our group equals get current group, current group, and similar thing for the current book. So instead of our group, we do our book, get current book, and this should say current book as well. Alright, so we have our two things that we're controlling in the state. and a way to retrieve them. So now we're going to need one function in here. And this function is going to be called void update state from database. So I know you could use streams for stuff like this. So you just have real-time data. But I want to make it as simple as possible, and to be honest, I'm not too experienced with streams, so I kind of want to learn a little bit of that. But I do have a task to update at least the auth to a stream, and potentially this also. But for now, we're going to make this an async, and we're going to update the database whenever we enter this screen. So this is going to need the group ID, because we want to know which group we need to do it for. And inside we could have a try catch. If we catch an error, print it. And we're going to have two functions. So we're going to want to get the group info from Firebase and get the current book info from Firebase as well. So we need to create two functions to get each of these things. So let's go to the database, and we have a function called getUserInfo. So this should be pretty similar to a function that we will need for the group. So we're returning our user here. Let's return our group. Instead of getUserInfo, we do getGroupInfo. So what we will need for the group, we'll need the group ID. And then that should be it. So here, create a group object instead. Document snapshot, instead of users, we want to go to groups. And the document ID is going to be the group ID that we want. So then return value is going to be ID will be the doc snapshot.document ID, or the group ID that we passed in, same thing. I guess we could just do group ID. It doesn't matter, whichever way you want to do. So return value will have the name of the group. All right, so here we have our group class, and we can see exactly what we need. So the name will be, I think, just stored as name. The leader will be stored as leader. Then we'll have a members, and the members is actually a little trickier. So the members list that returns from Firebase is of type dynamic. So you'll see a problem if you're trying to retrieve it like this. But there's a way to convert the dynamic list to a string list, and you do that by list string from, actually hold on, from this. And that should give you a list of strings. So pretty simple. Then you'll have group created, and then two more fields. One is current book ID, and current book due. Current book due. So there, we have the group information that we need. And then, like I said, we need one more function to get the current book that we're reading. So get current book. So here's how we're going to set up the database. We'll have our group. We need the two new fields that we added. Current book ID. We'll have a string. We'll give it ID 1234. And then current book due. We need a timestamp. Let's pick next Friday and 7 p.m. So for this episode, we're gonna hard code these values. The next episode, we'll actually create some interface to set these when you create the group, and then also whenever it's the next person's turn. So we'll set these manually, and then we'll also create a new collection inside of the group's collection. It's going to be called books. And we'll create a document ID of 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll have a name field of Harry Potter. We'll have a length, that's an integer, so number, we'll give it 123 pages. And the last one, completed on, or what do we have? Date completed. There's going to be a timestamp of next Friday at 7 p.m. So for now, we're just going to work with these static values that I created in the Firebase, and we're going to retrieve them and make sure everything works. The next episode, we're going to add on to that where we can actually set the books, give the current books, and we'll have all the history of all the books in the nested collection. I hope that made sense. But all right, so that's the idea we're going for. So since it's nested, we'll need the group ID, and we'll also need the book ID. Now the book ID requires the following fields. So we're going to go to the collection for groups, document group ID, then collection, that's books, and then document book ID. So we're going to get this book ID that we're passing in from our get group info. So this will be in our state already. And then last names, we have ID. It's going to be book ID. Or we can take the document snapshot ID as well. The name will be the name. The length. Oh, we have to make sure we change this to our book. So the length will be length and then date completed, or it'll be easier to use this, date completed, date completed. All right, so we have access to both of these now. All right, finally getting somewhere. Next thing, in the current group that we had, we need to call those functions. That's pretty simple. We do have the current group equal to our database dot get current group info. And the group ID we're going to pass in just like that. And there we go. And we need to await it. It's pretty simple. Now the way we set it up, it's also pretty simple to get the current book. So same way, our database dot get current book. We're going to need the group ID, which we already have, or we're getting passed in, and then the book ID as well. And we can get the book ID by getting current group dot current book ID. So we have fulfilled both of these comments. Now last thing, whenever you're using provider, you need to do notify listeners. This notifies any listeners that are listening to the state of these two that there has been a change. All right, so far so good. I think this should all be working, but if it doesn't, we'll be able to debug it pretty simple. So now in the home screen, let's change this from a stateless to a stateful widget. And then let's create an init state. And here what we're going to want to do is get current group And let's import that. Call it current group. Then using provider, we want to do of context and current group. So then with this current group, we want to do update state from database. And we need to pass a group ID. So this doesn't have it yet because we don't have the state isn't being updated. So we can't update with the group ID here. So we're going to need to do one more thing, and that's get the current user. Same way with provider dot of and current user. One thing to remember here, we're not changing the state, so we need to do listen false. We don't want to listen to the response, so both of these do listen false. And then here we can pass in the current user dot get current user and the group ID associated to that user. Alright, I hope that all makes sense. So using the user state that we have from the beginning of the whole app, the user state is given to the whole app. The group state, actually we don't have it given anywhere yet, but we don't have it when we first go to the home screen. We won't have it. Actually, let's do that right now. So in the home screen, whenever we go, we are in a group. I'm going to wrap this in a widget. I'm going to call it change notifier provider. And we do create. And instead of current user, we do current group. I need to import that as well. And let's add a comma for readability. So we're only providing the group state to anything within the home screen. If you're not logged in or not in a group, you're not going to be able to have access to the current group state. So that's why we need the user, because when we first go into this, we're not going to have anything in the current group. We're only going to have the user, and inside the user we have the group ID, and we can update our current group state using that group ID. Getting a little confusing, but hopefully I was able to explain it. So now we should be able to test it. If we go to our current group and put a breakpoint right here and restart the application, hopefully we'll have both of these fields filled out. So let's see. We have the current group, and we have the current book ID 1234, just like we defined it, timestamp, whatever, and then our current book, Harry Potter, length 123, ID 1234, and then a timestamp. So both our states are being executed correctly, or being updated correctly. So the last part is we need to update the UI accordingly to the state. So we go to our home screen again, if I can find it, and we're gonna just do this top one for now because we don't have this information added in yet. So you always want to make sure you're doing the lowest possible widget, and that's this column. It has the text, Harry Potter, and then when is due. So we want to wrap this column in a widget. The widget we want to wrap it in is the consumer widget. You notice some red squigglies because we need the builder function, the builder parameter. And we can copy this whole child inside the builder. and remove this child. We won't change it for now. And I need a semicolon at the end, and then we also need to return it. So we have all sorts of problems. So we need to make sure we put what consumer thing we're listening to. So the group state is the one we're listening to. So now if we refresh there, everything's there. So for the text, we want to do value dot get current book, the name. If it's null, return loading. Harry Potter, perfect. And then do in, we can get, I think, value dot get current group, since our do in is stored in the actual group field, current book due, that's where it's stored. The reason I put it here and not inside here is because this will have all the books, whether they're finished or still in progress. So we want to separate that out from what's currently being done in the group. So the current book due is in here. So we get current group and current book due. So let's make that to date and then to string as well. We're gonna see a problem with this. It's gonna run over the edge. Make sure we put it in a new widget called expanded. And then also if it's null, we want to do loading. But I think this still isn't gonna work. Well, we get the information, but if we refresh it, yeah, you'll saw that error for a bit. So you're saying that the method to date was called on null. So let's add a little check. This isn't going to be the prettiest check. If it doesn't equal null, you want to do this. And if it does equal null, show loading. All right, so now it should be all good, I think. I know this is a little ugly. It's gonna get cleaned up for sure. So if we go to the group state, put a breakpoint here and notify listeners, we should see it'll hit this breakpoint. We'll see loading for both. All this information is in the state. And then once notify listeners is called, it's updated to the right information. We'll convert this to obviously how many hours it's due until and all those things as well. So that's it for this episode. Hopefully it didn't get too clustered and confusing. Next episode, we're gonna give the input. So whenever you create a club or a group, you'll have to do this. And then also, whenever this time runs out, you'll also want to get the next person will have to update a new book with a new due-in date. That's right. That's it. This code will be on GitHub. If you have any questions or anything, leave it in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And thanks for watching.